Today is a very difficult day, and candidly, it's an announcement that we have done everything possible to avoid making. Since GM's announcement on the 26th of November, I have had Canadians on the street, in restaurants, every day people are saying to me, when are we going to boycott General Motors vehicles? And I keep saying to them, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense for us to ever call for an outright boycott because we have so many members that work in Ingersoll. We have so many members that work in St. Catharines and, of course, the parts depot in Woodstock. So the more people kept pushing us and demanding that we boycotted General Motors vehicles, we hired a polling group. And what came out? It's Echo's Polling, one of the predominantly respected companies in the country. And they told us that 45% of Canadians would absolutely support an outright boycott. Another 26%, making over 70% of Canadians, would say they would strongly consider boycotting GM products. So today, we are announcing that we will be launching a major campaign urging Canadians and American consumers not to buy GM vehicles that are shipped from Mexico. This is over 600,000 vehicles a year that are shipped from Mexico to Canada and the United States. This is over $20 billion worth of sales for General Motors. So you see, General Motors is arrogant to the point that they think that they can close our assembly plant in Oshawa, they can close 4 assembly plants in the United States or 4 plants in the US while ramping up production in Mexico. So as GM has choices, Canadian and American consumers have choices. Because we need to remember, when GM needed us the most, we were there for them. We are asking Canadians to stand up to corporate greed. We're asking you to stand up to greedy motors. We want you to buy only GM vehicles that are made in Canada and the United States. These ads will be shown on television, will be in newspapers, and will be on billboards right through Canada and the United States. Remember, if the VIN starts with a 3, that vehicle is not for me. And we will be asking consumers, when you go into a GM dealership, to be sure that you write in the agreement that if the vehicle VIN number starts with a 3, that you will not be taking delivery of this vehicle. So all Canadians, we are urging today, please take a few seconds. Send a pledge, send a message to General Motors that as long as you are intent on closing the Oshawa complex, you will not be buying a vehicle assembled in Mexico. Of course, there's a problem with this because this is not us attacking Mexican workers. But what we're disgusted by is how General Motors is using these workers as pawns for corporate profits. The fact that General Motors pays their employees in Mexico $2 an hour is an absolute disgrace. And that's why today we call them greedy motors, because it's about greed. So we're asking people, please go to the saveoshawagm.ca website right now and take the pledge. Remind GM that we gave them $11 billion, over $300 per Canadian. And we need to remind them we're not going to forgive them for walking away from us. As a nation, we are very generous and incredibly supportive, but we also have long memories. And people are saying to me, we'll never forget GM's greed. And people are always saying to me, Jerry, why are you so upset about this? Why are you so wound up? I'm wound up because General Motors has consistently lied to us, and that's the frustration. In 2008 negotiations, we signed a collective agreement. Within weeks, they announced the closure of the truck plant. Didn't even tell us. And these are decisions that are made so far in advance. In 2012 negotiations, we raised to them at the bargaining table. There's all kinds of noise about our Camaro going to the Lansing plant in the United States. And they said, no, 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 we've heard those rumors as well. And then months later, they moved our Camaro to the Lansing plant in the United States. And then, of course, the ultimate lie in 2016, when they announced that they were moving the Chevy Terrain to Mexico. They told us, don't worry, there won't be one layoff as a result of that announcement in Ingersoll. And of course, we know today that we have 600 less jobs in Ingersoll and about 350 of our members on layoff. And of course, the ultimate lie that they told us at the bargaining table and announced to Canadians after negotiations is that there would be no closures during the life of the agreement. So when General Motors says, don't worry about it, we're not leaving Canada, Ingersoll is fine, St. Catharines is fine, I suggest to you, don't listen to GM's word, follow their actions. And this has been GM's actions in Canada in the last 25 years. We used to build over 900,000 GM vehicles a year. The entire Mexican industry 25 years ago was just 1 million vehicles, and that was for all automakers, of which less than 200,000 were GM vehicles. Fast forward 2 decades. Canada and Mexico both built 650,000 vehicles for General Motors. GM made an announcement in 2013 that they were investing $5 billion to double the manufacturing footprint in Mexico. And here we are today. With their announcement, if in fact Oshawa closes, we will be building less than 200,000 vehicles for General Motors, and they will be building almost 1 million vehicles in Mexico. So this is a company that you have to view based on their actions, not on their shallow promises or words. And so we are furious that General Motors has once again lied to us, and we are doing everything we can to get their attention. This is very simple, General Motors. Live up to the commitment you made to us in 2016. Keep our Oshawa plant open for another 9 months as you committed to, and that 9 months buys us time to find solutions. You need to keep your word. Canadian consumers are punishing you. Canadian consumers will continue to punish you, and we are emphatic to ensure that this message reaches consumers in both Canada and the United States. If the VIN starts with 3, that vehicle is not for me. You're taking advantage of Canadian and American consumers, and we're going to have something to say about that today. The vehicles that we are urging the boycott are vehicles that are built in Mexico. For example, we are strongly suggesting that people buy the Chevy Equinox that our members build in Ingersoll. But you'll know that our members are building it if the VIN number does not start with a 3. So that's what we're talking about today. This is about a straight disinvestment in Canada. Our jobs have gone to Mexico, and we're saying the only way to get General Motors' attention is by us fighting back, and we need to take on this fight with General Motors as a nation, not just with us standing here today.
Jerry, isn't this a dangerous game that you're playing? People might just turn their back on GM vehicles entirely here, and it would be harmful to your workers in Ingersoll and wherever else they make GM
I don't see it as a dangerous game. Why? Because it's already happening. GM sales in Canada were down 30% in December of 2018 from December of 2017. All along we've been saying to GM, don't do this. Canadian consumers are punishing you. People are watching this. Canadian consumers will never forget the bailout. They didn't mind it because they understood the importance to our economy. Over $1 billion a year. Our taxpayers' money that goes into our communities. Infrastructure spending, schools, hospitals. So we understand the enormous economic payback. But people today are feeling betrayed. So what we're saying to GM is, you brought this on yourself. So our members understand where our jobs are going. They're going to Mexico. So at some time or another, we need to have this fight, and it might as well be now.
Jerry, hi, Christina Tenalia, CP24. GM says that there are Canadian suppliers and Canadian companies that make parts for Mexican production. Are there not going to be some Canadian companies, suppliers, organizations hurt as part of this campaign?
The Canadian suppliers that supply to Mexican plants are located in Mexico. Very few parts, if any, actually go from Canada to Mexico. So are Canadian companies such as Magna and Martin Ria in supplier parks around the Mexican assembly operations? The answer is yes. But as for Canadian workers being negatively impacted, the answer is the numbers would be slim to none. But the facts is that we can't allow this to continue. General Motors, contrary to their public comments, in my opinion, are leaving Canada in its totality, and we need to stop that.